Roses are red, violets are blue. Fourth estate falls on Valentine's, and today we talk about love. It's one of the places that people engage with the most in the newspaper or even on radio. People like to talk about love. People like to engage with love. Everyone almost is in a relationship of sorts with your parents, with your lovers, or even with your girlfriends, or even if you're married. But how well does love do in the press? And today, to discuss that, I have a panel with me of people who actually write about love in the media. Let's start with you, Angela, if you can introduce yourself to our viewers.
My name is Angela Nampo. I'm the features editor at the Daily Monitor, but I also write, and I am a gatekeeper. I look at these stories when they come in, when they are written, and as they go out.
Bradford, if you would introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Bradford Kamuntu. I'm a relationships columnist at the Daily Monitor. Yeah.
Angela, how's it been like people consuming love columns in the newspaper? I know that when I buy the newspaper or when I get the newspaper in the morning, I first read the politics, I put the newspaper away. Then later in the evening, I start to read about people and their love lives. Do you get the same engagement from your readers?
Oh, yes, we do. We do, and love stories, relationship stories also do very well online. So we have people picking up the paper, reading it at leisure, looking for different things, looking for real life stories. They want to see how other people are doing in love, but they also want to get tips on how to make it better, because love is hard. People
Is
want
it? People make it look like it's an easy thing. It's mushy and
it
lovely,
can be nice, cute, cuddly, but it can also get ugly,
yes.
and difficult. So people want to see, how are others doing it? How do I make it better? How do I spice it up? That kind of thing.
Yeah, Brad, what inspired you to write a relationship column?
Well, the idea was brought to me at first before I had actually considered to write a relationship column. But then I thought about the fact that many people in our generation, like millennials, because we had toyed around with the idea of calling it millennial something. We landed on millennial voice. And I thought about the fact that many people in my generation are struggling with relationships. They don't know who to talk to. They don't know where to pick advice from. They're getting many conflicting views from the people in their lives. So I was like, maybe I should just, and also I was talking to a lot of people about their relationships, and they're like, oh, you give such sound advice, you tell me all these things. So I was like, maybe I should toy around with an opinion piece, what I think about relationships today, or relationships as they pertain to millennials.
So what kind of feedback do you get from people when you write the column?
A lot, mostly good feedback. There are rarely any challenges. I think I've been challenged once where someone really didn't agree with what I was saying, and I was so strong about my opinion that we had a lot of back and forth in the emails. But most of the feedback is good. People really love reading about relationships, and they love telling me like, oh, I'm going through this, and this week this is what you talked about. I've been thinking the same thing. They find solutions in it, so the feedback is great. Yeah.
Angela, where does your love, the work that you do with the love writing, where does it do well the most? Is it in the paper? Is it on social media? Is it on radio? Where does it do well the most?
This work does very well on where you can see it immediately, or you can tell immediately where it does well. Radio, it does very well online, because the responses are instant. People get back, they write back, and they comment, in real time. But it also does very well in the paper. Yes, because we've been doing this. We've had relationship columns or magazines under different titles over, about the last 20 years, at least as long as I've been doing this. And yes, these are some of the most popular sections of the paper.
Brad, if I could ask you, there's something that I always conflict with. Very few people want to openly discuss what's happening in their love lives.
Yeah.
I presume that should be harder for the press to actually get love stories out there. How do you end up with content to write about?
That's a good question, because it's conflicting for me as well. I don't really, because I'm not a public figure. So I don't want to write about myself or my personal relationships in the newspaper. But that being said, I have taken some things from personal experience and used that for content. then I have a lot of conversation with friends, with just people I meet, because socially I get to talking to people very easily. And for some reason, they always open up to me. So I use that as well, without, of course, revealing anything too explicit or too personal. And then I read a lot. I'm always reading online, actual books. I watch a lot of shows and I see situations and I'm like, that doesn't seem right. Maybe I should write about it and explore it. Or I'm like, hey, this is an idea for fixing relationship problems. So that I find content from all over. Yeah.
Do you find a problem when people say, this is not the actual love life that I'm experiencing? Like, do you get feedback where people say, you write about love, but this is not the love that I'm experiencing in my relationship?
I haven't got that yet, but it's possible. I mean, not everyone experiences the same kind of love. I actually did an article that was exploring how love has evolved and that there are many different sorts of relationships and situationships, if you will. So I haven't encountered that yet, but I'll be open to like exchanging and learning what they don't agree with or what they feel doesn't fit.
Yeah, Angela, what's gatekeeping for love like? I know when I'm gatekeeping political stories, it's the facts. What do the facts look like? I presume in love, the facts are different in every relationship. So what's gatekeeping on for a love column like?
First of all, a lot of things have changed in the way love is perceived. Love is practiced. Maybe about 40, 30 years ago, we had sort of a clear roadmap with rules. Okay, this is what you do, then you go in, and it's in sickness and in health, and you know. These days, it's a lot more choices. The rules are flexible. You don't have to get married at a certain age, get into a relationship. Maybe there's an option about, so there are so many choices, and so you have to understand the audience. And there's always a chance, when you asked about whether sometimes people don't agree with what we are saying, I've experienced that. Actually, one time we had a Twitter storm where we were talking about, women being, single and men being single, and people were saying, why is it's more like the burden of being single is on the woman, and why aren't you asking the man the same questions, So you will run into a lot of that. The perceptions have changed, the attitudes are different, and people are going to question a lot. So we actually rely on, we use a lot more experts these days, because like I said, love is complicated. A lot more things are happening. There's equality, there's, all kinds of balancing acts. So you don't want to step,
on people's toes.
Yes.
Basically walking on eggshells at every time.
You're walking on eggshells. You don't want to be sexist, you don't want to be this, So that's what gatekeeping looks like. Yes.
Brad, if I could ask you, we live in a society which is still very deeply traditional. You have an urban elite which is branching away from that tradition, but we're very deeply traditional. And I mean, the same newspaper where you're writing for a millennial is the same newspaper the bishops are reading. It's the same newspaper the parents are reading.
Exactly.
How do you strike a balance between those two competing cultures?
I draw a line in the sand for myself, and I know not to cross certain boundaries. I think going into this, I already knew that Monitor was, a family newspaper, very PG. So there are certain topics I challenge myself not to talk about, even though I find them extremely interesting. And I've even written like an article or two that I think are very out there, and I've sort of held on to them. But I didn't have to find a balance. I just have to find my main challenge, I say, when I'm writing, is just to find a way to make it fit for everyone. That even if the bishop is reading, he's not offended by what I'm saying. So that's maybe cut anything explicit out and just keep the topics very neutral.
Angela, the backlash that we get in the media, lately is on the millennials who consume the press. Like to say we are conditioning them. At least I see it in the political press. I think I also see it now in the relationship press, where people say, why are you conditioning us to believe that this is the only way to exercise love and marriage? How do you balance those aspects where you know there are new cultures within which people express love, but there are the old established traditions where you love someone, you get married to them, you produce kids, you have a family and the like. But there are people who are challenging that, and they are also consumers of the press. How do you balance that up?
First of all, we've gone into real life stories. So in real life stories, you'll have people telling you all kinds of, because every relationship is different. So you'll have people telling you about, race relations, money, all the different things. So then you can cater to the different audience needs, and people can find where they fit in that. That's one way. The other way is we tried, like I said, we try to use quite a number of experts. We try to draw people from the church, life coaches, counselors, and try to get a variety of opinion out there. And as getting people like Brad, getting the different age groups. I might have a different thinking because of where I am, what generation I've grown up in, and that sort of thing. So balancing all those things, we hope.
You hope that there's a balance, but
we hope, but it's a daily struggle. It's like I said, love is hard. World over, you'll find all the experts tell you there's a lot of things to consider now. Yes.
Brad, what's an expert? I hear Angela saying this thing a lot, expert. But what's an expert in things concerning love and relationships?
Personally, I don't consider myself an expert.
Yes, but what's it like?
I don't want anyone to think so, because I don't want people to come and tell me, oh, you said this in your article and I did it and it didn't work, so no, I'm not an expert. But I guess the terms Angela is speaking of, like if, say, someone from a church is a religious expert, they know how relationships are handled in a religious way. And then maybe a psychologist who coaches people on their relationships and how they handle them. So that's what I would consider as an expert. Personally, I would class myself as just an enthusiastic talker, someone opinionated who's going to...
You have an opinion.
I have so many opinions about relationships, so I'm going to always try and get those opinions out there. But yeah, if you're speaking expert in that sense, then it's maybe someone with a professional background in what they're saying.
Angela, before we check the break, I just wanted to ask you, still on the competing ideas about writing on love, I've seen a ton of young people who see the kind of work that's produced, say, even in the Monitor, at least I see them online, and they say, this is aspirational, I'd love to aspire to this. Do you ever feel like you have the weight of the country's aspirations in terms of love and relationships? Do you have, as an editor, do you feel I have the weight of these relationships on my shoulder?
Definitely. That is one of the things that I carry, we carry. And you asked about the gatekeeping. Those are some of the things you look at and you wonder, so what are we giving, the people? Is there something? Sometimes it's hope, you're giving people hope. You don't want to just say, love is overrated and whatever. So you sometimes look at what you're producing and see, is it giving people? Because if you don't handle love right, if you don't do love right, and if you take people down a certain path, like I said, love can get ugly. A lot of things can go wrong. So it's a burden to sort of keep people in the right mindset. Try to at least do a bit. I know we can't do everything. But
so what's the right mindset? That's the one I'm looking for. What's the right mindset? The one that is aspirational.
That love is doable. It's not easy, but it's doable. Because if you go and say, oh, it's going to be a bed of roses, I think you will be lying to the people, because a lot of people know that it's, even from some of us enthusiastic talkers, and people with maybe their rich lived experience know that it's not quite true. So, but you don't want to say, okay, it's all doom and gloom. So you have to show them, how can it be done.
All right, thank you so much, Angela and Brad. We'll take a very short break, but when we get back, we continue discussing the love column in the dailies. Welcome back to the Fourth Estate. Uniquely, today we're talking about love in the press. Angela was talking to us about, before we left, about how to make an aspirational value out of that. Brad, I want you to talk to us about the people who don't believe in love, the cynics. I might just be one of them, but I consume the press and I go and read all these love things. I'm like, maybe I might find some hope in here. So how do you deal with the cynics?
First of all, I think it's a mindset. So people who typically don't believe in love have conditioned themselves not to, maybe because of what they saw growing up or experiences they had. So how I deal with them usually is by trying to talk to them to be open to the idea of love and maybe open to things being different than they were the last time. But there's only so much you can do, so that's as far as you're going to go. And then it's upon them to maybe open up their minds a bit or start to see it in a different light. But a cynic is a hard person to turn around, usually.
Yeah, Angela, how do you deal with the cynics as an editor?
Now we have different types of writing, different styles of writing. Sometimes I fill in for one of our relationship columnists, even though I'm an editor. But I think one way to talk to the cynics is try to see where they're coming from and try to relate with them from that point of view. So, because like I said, to write about love or to be these columnists, sometimes it takes a combination of a rich lived experience and maybe a great imagination plus a combination of all the things we read. And there is a way to write and talk to this person in the language they understand and say, okay, I get it. You don't, Valentine's, these things, it's overrated and everything, but, this is how, this is how I see it. This is how maybe other people see it. And, when you combine the different things, they might, along the way, if you speak to them in a language they understand, they might actually be more converted than when you go and try to tell them, or, whatever you think is hogwash, It's,
Yeah. Brad, if I could engage you here, a lot of love journalism is different from these other forms of journalism. These other forms of journalism, we normally go out to sources, talk to them, they tell us what they feel, we put it in the press, and ask experts and put it together. But the styles of doing love journalism is mostly someone tells you their problem, and then you try to deal with the problem the way that you give them advice. Do you think that maybe it's time to switch the styles within which we write about love? Because, it's been done on radio, it's been done in the press now for a long time.
Yeah, 100%, because like Angela said, it has evolved. Love now isn't like it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. So people are not doing the same things. Even in terms of the way it's presented, it's extremely different. So yes, I think it should change. There should be a shift where we talk to people more and ask them their opinion as opposed to telling them what they should do in their relationships. And I think a shift needs to happen.
Angela, do you lose sleep over the style of writing for relationships and love?
No, actually. What we do is, like I said, we get people who can speak different love languages, if I may call it that. So our columnists, for example, have different styles. So you'll have we even give the cynics a chance to write their version of the story.
I should try.
Yes, you're welcome to try. So we have different styles. So we get different voices coming in. But we also have, courtesy of social media and, you know, all the technology, we have more people telling their own stories. So we have more voices coming in. Yes.
Yeah, Brad, that's an important point that I also wanted you to talk about.
Yeah.
Just how much has social media influenced how much you write about perceptions or even advice that you give?
A lot. It has influenced it a lot. I rely on social media. I'd say about 40% of my writing style and my articles I derive from social media, because a lot more people now are putting their relationships out there in the open. They're showing us what's going on. People who are struggling now are more open and inclined to share with the cyberspace what they're dealing with. And I pick from those stories. I pick from what I'm seeing, from what perceptions are. Sometimes I know the relationships personally, and I'm seeing what they're putting out there for everyone to see and what they're actually dealing with. So it influences a lot. I think social media is highly underrated in all aspects of life, but even in love reporting. Yeah.
Do you try and engage the people on social media, say separately, or normally just reading what they're writing?
I try separately. I try separately with those who are open to talking about it, of course. But usually it's just from reading a blog or seeing what couples are talking about on their YouTube channel or things like that. I just pick from those sources. Yeah.
Angela, let's talk about the monetary value of writing about love. Definitely there's a lot of attention on love and relationships. Have you, as an editor in the editor's room, said, maybe we can monetize this independently as its own form of journalism, away from the politics and the like?
Oh yes, and it's been monetized for years. I grew up reading, you've seen all these glossy magazines, Cosmopolitan, I don't know, all those magazines out there. Men's Health. They're writing and they have been monetizing love for years. And we can. Now the difference is that we can now do it on more platforms. We can do it online. And like we pointed out earlier, people actually love to read a good story. And they're looking for good ideas. So if you told them 40 tips or, you know, 40 ways to improve your marriage or whatever, and it's by some renowned author, they'll be, you know, tempted to come and read. So yes, there is a lot of, it's been monetized before in other forms, print, but now it can be monetized, and it's being monetized online, which is, yes.
Brad, have you thought about monetizing your model of writing for love?
Yeah, I've given it thoughts. I just haven't thought about what angle to take. I don't want it to just be solely romantic relationships. I would want to cover all aspects of relationships, whether it be between siblings and friends and parents and children. But yeah, there's, like Angela said, people have been monetizing off it for very many years, and I think now it's becoming a huge reality here that it's something you can make money off it.
There's another, this is a final question, but it's a personal concern that I find. There's a lot of marginalizing, like I rarely find content for men in there, not even on relationships, just basic content. How do you shave your beard, for example? That stuff I would have found in the newspaper. I don't find it. A dinner date. The other day, I was Googling where to have dinner dates in Kampala, and there's hardly any information and stuff like that. Are there like plans to increase the amount of information you write about? Start with you, Brad, and then Angela.
For males?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm already doing that. There's a way you can give a generalized opinion that could work for both genders. I'm also trying to, in each article, to give space and room to each gender, like how you should handle it and how the male party should handle it. So, yeah, I think personally I'm doing that. I don't, like you're saying, I've also looked for, many times I've looked to the media or to social media for things that a man requires or should do, and I failed to find that information out there. But I think it's slowly changing, and soon.
Angela, is it a crisis that we don't have men writing, or it's just that there's no information for men out there to write about?
There is information for men, and there are men writing. Maybe it's in our packaging, because we do have, for example, in our Scoop magazine, which is more for the young person interested in. So you'll find fashion advice. You'll find men telling you about what they like to wear, who inspires them, and so we've had a bit of that in several places, but it's a good thing and it's a good idea, and the need is there to put this in a place like
where they can find it.
Yes, where men can actually.
Yeah. Very finally, what's the future? What does the future look like for writing about love, relationships, marriage? What do you see as the future?
Like we spoke about briefly earlier, one, monetizing this is a big deal, putting it out there online, having more people getting access in all the different platforms they use, because there are so many different things, that spin-offs that come from relationships. There are products, there are different things, and so this can be very commercially viable. But also having more people, because love is a private thing, so people don't really, sometimes you never really know what's going on in relationships. But yes, writing more and differently and for different segments, the underserved, like you said, the men, the younger people, because love is not getting any easier, it's getting more complicated, and trying to bring and put all these different voices, because there's so much information out there, but putting it somewhere where someone can know, okay, when I get here, this is where I get something a little bit more authoritative. Because there are so many people out there. You asked about experts, singers, coaches, pastors. Everybody's dispensing some kind of advice. But if there is, some kind of place, we have solid magazines where, men can find a section, young people can find a section, women can find. I think that's.
Brad, what does the future look like for you?
What it looks like, or rather what I would want it to look like, is more open and liberal. I think because we're in a society that doesn't discuss many things about relationships, and relationships have significantly evolved, even here. I want it to look more realistic, where people are talking about not just the fairy tales and the beds of roses that people expect to find in relationships, but more real concrete issues, like how to deal with a partner that has mental health issues, or how to deal with money issues, like more realistic things, or how the different types of relationships that we have today.
Basically get involved in the lives of the people that you write about. Thank you so much, Brad. Thank you so much, Angela, for making it today. And thank you so much to our viewers. This is, I know, a very unique fourth estate. You'll never find it anywhere. But also, it's very rare that we have a Valentine's Day on the fourth estate. To those of you that didn't have Valentine's, thank you so much for making us your Valentine and having a date with us. Those of you that watched us with your date, thank you so much for giving us your time. See you again, same time next week.